Hey guys, so today's video is clearly a collaboration with Phoebe. Why does she always do this when I'm filming? Hey guys, so today we have a book video. I know I have been gone for about a month, but it's just been difficult I was so burnt out of making videos that I had to really just pause, take a break, and plan some things out that make me happy and then just go on. This is also just not my only channel. I do so many things, and when you get burnt out for all of them, and you have to like re-plan, redo all of them, it gets kind of difficult. So I'm back and I will be posting regularly. So subscribe, hit that bell, like, comment for engagement, and all my other channels will be in the description. That includes a deep dive channel, a short commentary channel, and a podcast. That's that on that. Today's video is one that I saw floating around. I watched a few book channels do it and I thought it was really interesting. So let's just get into it. This is not a concise list. This list can be added to / taken away from. So this is like a first draft, I guess you could say. And then I'll use your guys' comments to adapt, change, add. So please let me know your options for this. It's books that you're probably not going to read, mainly really popular books that you don't want to read. Let me know which ones of these you think I should read, and then also let me know which ones you do not plan on reading, so I can maybe consider also not reading them too. And give me your reasons. Like, I think it'll just be a really nice conversation about like not falling for the hype every time. Let's go. So books I will not read is the probably won't read, is the Twilight prequel that came out called Midnight. I did not care about the initial series when it came out. I didn't read it as a teenager and I didn't watch the movies as a teenager because I thought it was just too cool for it. I watched like one of the movies with my friend in the cinema because she was kind of a fan of the series. So I went along and I watched, I believe, the final or the second, like I just went in with no knowledge. I just watched one of the parts and I think it was one of the last few parts. And then as an adult, not adult, when I was like, actually adult, when I was like 18, I read 2 of them or 3 of them because I was on holiday, and they're like perfect like holiday guilty reads. You're just like going through them, flying through them, but I'm just not attached enough to, I never finished the series either. Like I still have a book to read, two books or 1 book to read. I think I read Twilight and New Moon, and then I didn't read the other 2, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I might finish the series at some point, but I'm not invested enough in the characters to read the prequel, and the prequel is from Cullen's point of view, and I just do not care about that point of view at all. So I probably just will not read the prequel to Twilight. On the same note, I also will not read the prequel to Hunger Games. Hunger Games is one of my favorite series of all time. I just got my boyfriend to watch the movies, so we just watched the first one and he was impressed. We're gonna watch the second one. He also wants to read the books, which he's not into reading books like fiction and things like that. He likes like non-fiction audiobooks, typical stuff, but he's not into fiction. So the fact that I'm getting him into like Hunger Games, I think it's a classic. It should be considered a classic. I think Hunger Games is one of the most overrated in a way because it's one of the biggest series of all time, but like I think it's underrated in how important it is to this day. Like I think Susan Collins really did what she had to do with that series. It still applies today more than ever. Like I think the series is just transcending time. I can sit here and talk about how much I love Hunger Games all day. I think it's an amazing book series and an amazing adaptation. I think the movies, as much as they're obviously not as good as the books, are still very good. Like even if you just hadn't read the books and you just watched the movies, I still think you're getting a lot out of it. But I will not read the prequel. I don't think prequels should exist. I barely like them when they're like in books, like included in the book, like a little like prequel, epilogue. I don't like those bits. I think they're super rushed, unnecessary. They're just there to fill the plot without actually having to put in much effort into writing them. I think they're a very rushed way of being like 5 years before this, 5 years later. Like I just hate it. It's always super like, like just like, you know, just leave it open-ended, leave it to people's imagination. I don't want to know what happened before the Hunger Games because I like the little bits of explanation that they gave us in the main books. I think that was enough for me to figure out like, oh, there was a war, people rebelled, now we have the district, yada yada yada. Like I don't need all the other information. And the prequel is about President Snow, which I also just don't care. He is the evil man in the series. He's the antagonist. What I need to know about him is what I know in the series. Once again, I can think of the rest. He had a bad childhood, bad upbringing, his parents didn't love him, like the typical stuff. I don't actually need to know. I can just create my own version of President Snow in my head as a child, and I think that's enough. I think what we got in the main series is enough, is more than enough. And I think just leave good, solid series the way they are. Just don't touch them. Once they are done, don't touch them. And we've learned this from Harry Potter, right? The Cursed Child, you know, the really crap one that I was talking about. That's another one I would just refuse to read because I love the original series, despite J.K. Rowling being a weirdo, a problematic weirdo. Like, that series still holds a lot of nostalgia in my brain. I just don't really talk about it a lot on the internet because of the, like, I've already bought the books, so I'm going to read them, but it's not really something that I mention a lot on this channel because it's just it's a not necessary book to mention, book series. But I will just refuse to buy The Cursed Child. Like, I just don't care about it. I like to imagine what I think happens after the series, and I don't need them to tell me. I think that's just my whole thing, is like, once you finish a series, for me, that's the time that I get to think of my own endings and think of my own predictions of what happened before and after. And then once you come in with your prequel / epilogue and you start changing things that because I had years at this point, like The Hunger Games came out years ago, probably a decade ago. In that decade, I had the time to think about what I think happened after, what I think happened before. And then you're coming in being like, this is actually what happened. I'm like, okay, great, well, that ruins everything that I was thinking. Thank you. So I'm just not a big fan of like prequels and epilogue, like just the whole thing. I'm gonna just leave it to my imagination. My imagination works just fine, thank you. Little Life, I can't remember the name of the author. It's a pretty difficult name to pronounce. I don't want to mess it up either, so I'll just put it up on the screen. And anything else by her. I think what this would be referred to as is like, just like overly sad, torturous books to read that are just constantly flooding you with torture and very graphic depictions of events that like maybe you haven't gone through. Well, most people will never go through. Of course, everyone has like bits of very difficult moments in their life, but to have that many things happening at the same time is a very like small group of very unfortunate people that it will happen to. And I understand being educated about the things happening in the book and being educated about what that small percentage of people go through in the world, but I just think it's too much. Does that make sense? Like, I've seen bits of the book, I've seen people reacting to the book, the sobbing that happens when people read the book. I just think there is something about like purposefully reading overly graphic depictions of crimes and physical violence that just doesn't bring me much joy. I do consume true crime because it's true, it's something that happened. You can educate yourself on kind of like what goes on in the world and what people are going through, and you can sign petitions and you can try to get, you know, cold cases to not be cold anymore. And is that what you refer to it as? Like a cold case being re-looked at. But I think to make essentially a fictional story where the main character is just like going through it and you read very graphic descriptions of that just isn't my favorite. I just think it's borderline exploitative, and it is just saying really shocking things for the sake of like borderline traumatizing the reader. And that's just not my favorite thing. And I believe that her books are probably going to follow that trend. So that's just not my favorite type of book to read. So I'm not going to read A Little Life or anything else by the author unless she writes like a really happy, like positive haha book, which I don't think she will. So I'll pass. I hope that made sense. Like, I do understand that people go through things and it's very good to educate yourself, but I don't think reading a fictional graphic depiction of crime is like very graphic depiction is the way it should be done. So the next one is My Dark Vanessa, or any Lolita adjacent stuff. I do know that My Dark Vanessa doesn't paint the guy as like a good guy, whereas Lolita kind of is a bit ambiguous, almost blaming the 13-year-old teenager for being groomed by an adult. If you guys don't know, both these are about like grooming of like an adult man falling madly in love with like a 13-year-old. So Lolita, when it first came out, like I think it was taken a bit differently. So people were almost like romanticizing it. Then it was like the Lana Del Rey effect on Tumblr where everyone was just like madly in love with this like aesthetic. 3, they kind of sexualized the girl in the movie adaptations that came out. I believe that My Dark Vanessa actually does romanticize the relationship, and it's actually really sad. However, I don't particularly want to read books about grooming in any capacity. Like, that's just not my favorite. So like almost on the same effect as Little Life and any books by her, just not my favorite topic to read about. I think when I read fiction, I don't particularly want it to almost feel like true crime because I already consume true crime. I don't then need to read about like a fictional relationship between an adult and a teenager. That's just not really my favorite thing to do. So moving on. I actually have this book and I don't think I'll ever get to it. It's Shatter Me. I think at this point it came out so long ago that it's just not on my like most recent TBR. Like, it's not like, oh my god, I really can't wait to read Shatter Me. I didn't buy any of the other parts. I just have the part 1. I think I bought a used paperback. Like, that's when you know I'm not really committed to the cause of the book. Like, if I'm buying it like paperback instead of hardback, I'm just like, I might get to this at some point in time, but not anytime soon. So I just don't think I'll read it. Another very, 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 very popular one recently because of the movie adaptation is Dune. I just don't really want to read it. Like, I haven't heard anything like fantastically amazing about it other than it just being very like classic sci-fi, and I'm not actually a huge fan of sci-fi. I like dystopian and I like fiction and fantasy, but I'm not a big fan of sci-fi. I'm also not a big fan of like classic back in the day sci-fi. Like anything that was written like 20 years ago by like an older man, just not really my favorite vibe. I don't particularly like any of those like older books. I don't read Stephen King. I know that's a bit of a shocking one. I don't read much sci-fi, mainly if it's like older sci-fi. It just doesn't really bring me much joy, so I'm not gonna read Dune or any really like strongly sci-fi books. It's just not really my favorite vibe. I actually read the first one of this and it's a bestseller last year and it's still on the bestseller list for some reason, but the ratings aren't, I haven't heard that much hype for it on the internet or on YouTube. Maybe I'm on the wrong parts of the internet, but The Thursday Murder Club, I read the first one. It's about a group of like elderly people from a care home that are trying to solve a murder. I was actually very bored by the end of the book, so I can't actually tell you guys what happened because I was listening to it on audio. I just wanted to get through it, and I think I was starting to like phase out in bits where I was just like, I'm not really sure what's going on. And I kept on rewinding it, and at some point I was like, I'm just done with rewinding it. I'm just gonna finish the book, and what I know is what I know. What I remember is what I remember. If I don't remember it, that's fine. So I can't actually tell you guys what happened. So if I wanted to read any of the sequels, I'd have to reread the book to understand it and then read the sequels, which I'm just not willing to do. So I'm not going to read any of the sequels that are coming out or have come out. I'm not, The Raven Boys. It's very popular. I think I have one of them, the first part, in physical format. Once again, I think I got it paperback because it was a bit of a risky choice for me, but everyone was raving about it, Raven Boys. I don't think it's a book for me at this point. I just don't think it is. Maybe just not for this time of my life. Maybe at some point I'll read it, but for now, The Raven Boys just doesn't really seem like the book that I'd be super interested in. Now, this one's a bit of a controversial one. Anything by Cassandra Clare. I just don't think I'll get to it. So I have some books by her in physical format. There's a lot of them, and then a lot of the times they're on sale on Audible, like all her other books, so I keep on buying them on sale for like £3. And at this point I'm like in a weird cycle of like, okay, well I already have all the other books, I might as well just keep on buying them just in case at some point I want to read them, so I don't have to buy them full price. But then there's so many that I'm starting to get a bit overwhelmed with, like, I will never start these series, and I feel like you have to start literally from book one to understand all her other books, and I don't really want to start. So I'm struggling a bit because I have so many Cassandra Clare books and she has written so many. I don't know why she does this. She just keeps on writing books, and like I love that for her, I really do, but as a reader it's just a bit overwhelming to get into it. So too many books is the reason for this one. If they're amazing, let me know which ones to read. Another controversial one, this will be the last one, Game of Thrones. I never watched the TV show. I'm also not into I like fantasy, but I'm not into super high fantasy, mainly written by older men a few years back when things were not as progressive, because I feel like they always have really problematic themes going through them, but like very problematic, and it's always very misogynistic as well, and that's just not really my favorite thing to read about, because I can't be bothered to like ignore some bits of the writing in order to enjoy the book. Like I'm just a bit like, if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not enjoying it. So Game of Thrones is just not my favorite. I might watch the TV show, but then I heard that the ending was hot garbage, and the ending was hot garbage because actually the book series is not finished. And no one knows if he'll ever finish it. So starting a series and getting like emotionally involved to then not actually have an ending to the book series makes me a bit infuriated. So I'm just not gonna start. Maybe once he finishes the series, I'll figure things out. But right now, the high fantasy, slightly problematic themes, just not doing it for me, personally. I might watch the TV show, maybe, but probably not. And that also goes for like Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, all the other ones. Very high fantasy, written a few years ago, not my favorite type of genre to read, so I'm just not going to. That's that on that. I've offended so many different communities with just this one video, and that's perfectly fine. Let me know which ones you're not going to read, any other ideas, or which ones I should read from this series because you think they're amazing and I should give them a second chance. This isn't like an official list. Like I said, this is like the first draft, so let me know, subscribe to the bell, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.